Hi, welcome. I just want to thank you for being here on behalf of the English department and the MFA program and the president's office. Really happy to have Laura tonight. I just want to say a few things. Upcoming on April 4th, there's Jennifer Egan. There's a bunch of upcoming readings. Just check your program to see what's coming up. Also, there's a Sylvia Plath symposium that will be at Roosevelt House coming up at the end of the month. That will be sort of advertised later on some time. Okay, it'll be March 30th, and they have not yet publicized it. Anyway, it'll be Mark Doty and the biographers of Sylvia Plath, the new biographer, Heather Clark, and who else? The editors of the poems and the letters, and me. And so it'll be very nice. It'll be a whole day long thing with scholars, most of whom I didn't mention. Okay. So before I introduce Laura, I just want to say a couple of thank yous. Thank you, Mike. Thanks for arranging the reading and many other things for us. And thank you to the staff, and thank you to all the students who are here. And thank you to Laura for being here. It's been a long time coming. My introduction to Laura Kasischke came by way of a recommendation, a command rather, from my friend Tony Hoagland. Read her, he ordered. That was years ago, and I haven't stopped. In an essay on metaphor, Tony called her one of the premier image makers of my generation. I'm leery of comparing and ranking when it comes to poetry, so I'll just say read her, and I'm going to try to describe a little bit what that's like to read her. But how to describe somebody who's consistently evolving work, right? Who has an astonishing, I don't know how many books, 17, 20 novels, books of poems. I'm not going to mention her many awards and the prizes. That too, you can look at your program for, but not now. So Laura Kasischke is a metaphysical poet with an unconscious on steroids, a thrilling ability to associate, a deeply intuitive intelligence, a great ear, who seems to know quite a bit about swans. Now, I said that before this morning, Laura. I wrote that. Her work calls to mind the anonymous medieval text, The Cloud of Unknowing, from which we can learn a lot about the practice of writing. Like this: when you begin, you find only darkness and, as it were, a cloud of unknowing. This mystic anon advises us to reconcile yourself, to wait in the darkness for as long as necessary. That sometimes it happens, a sudden impulse comes springing up into us like some spark from the fire. This might describe what it's like to write such poems as Laura Kasischke's. It also describes what it's like to read them. That spark, the collision between the ordinary life, the waiting on lines and feeding our cats, and here I'm paraphrasing her, that last hour waiting patiently for us on a tray somewhere in the future. There it is. As Auden says, a crack in the teacup opens a lane to the land of the dead. Last week, reading her exquisite Space in Chains. I thought of Auden's Christmas oratorio for the time being, his choral meditation on time and being and faith and belief and God and history. When I pulled out the book to check why it had occurred to me, a paper slipped out on which was written, bathroom, shelf behind toilet, broccoli. If you haven't experienced the pleasure of reading her poems, you might not understand why I say this collision captured for me the essence of what it's like to read Kasischke's work. The poems are thrilling. How does she do it? To leap and leap into rather than away from, to resist the rational, the urge to explain, to sit in uncertainties and contradictions and mystery, and this, to trust her reader to do it as well. As a reader, I'm sometimes bewildered in the best sense, as in led astray, lured into the wilds, into places I'd rather not think about. There's a lot of dread in her poems and loss, the awareness of this little flicker of time we have. But because there's so much love and warmth and generosity, not to mention the gorgeous music, the wit, she's really funny. The startling transitions, though there's that chill, dark bong of mortality throughout her work, she is like a psychic alarm clock. I feel addressed and companioned as I read, and weirdly comforted. Yes, we go there alone, but Laura will be there. Well, sometimes I feel that, but I always do feel that sense of somebody said it, right? It's like, it's that shock of metaphor. Somebody found the language, somebody said it, the thing you didn't know you were thinking or hadn't thought to think. Someone has transformed that experience. I could pull a line out of any one of her many, many, many books, but I'm going to read this little teeny bit from the Infinitesimals. The third trumpet. On it, that beautiful tune they like to play before the execution. They played it through the entirety of your life, but it was background music. You weren't supposed to listen to it. Really. Not only the spark, that flash, how right it is, but damn, why didn't I write that? Other lines from her poems float back to me, or what I should say, often lines from her poems float back to me while I'm brushing my hair or chopping the broccoli. You'll see the lines will come back. There's this mystery at the heart of her work that is, it's thrilling to read. Rooms, there's rooms inside rooms, windows inside crawl space, mouse holes, trap doors. Let yourself fall. The poems can be elusive and haunting and riddling. Any moment of settling is provisional. An aperture keeps opening, that crack in the teacup, and you fall into it. But what is it? A feeling I have sometimes reading her poems. It. It takes time to read a book of hers, a poem. They're like the gift that keeps giving. You finish the poem and you're sucked right back into it, into yourself, into it. I hope I've given you a little bit of a sense of the pleasure and the joy it is to read her as well. But now you finally actually get to hear her. So, Laura.
Thank you so much. If I just left now, you'd all be so impressed with me. It's such an honor to be here. Thank you to Donna and Mike and all the nice students I met today. Thoughtful, brilliant, kind, generous students, and they're wonderful instructors. It's really as I said, an honor to be here. Now I shall try to read after that introduction to me. I thought I'd start with this poem. Can you hear me okay? It's called Clown, but I know that you're not mostly Michiganders. Who is a Michigander here? No. Okay, I'll explain then. We have Big Boy. You have Big Boy restaurants. Oh, you know what it is? Well, there's a big boy that there's a statue of a big boy outside the Big Boy restaurant, and Big Boy, has everything like burgers and fries and stuff like that. And but their famous thing is that during strawberry season. They have strawberry pie. So I wrote, okay, so this is about the small town that I live in, which has a big boy in it, in Michigan, Chelsea, Michigan. Well, not only do we have a big boy, we have a clown, like a clown who is our town's clown. And often her name is Colors the Clown, and often she is seen wearing her clown outfit, just at the grocery store, pumping gas into her car and that kind of thing. And it's startling, but you get used to it. And but when my son first saw her out in public when he was about 3, it was a little bit shocking for him. And it happened to be at Big Boy. And I wrote this poem. She went on to marry a friend of mine, but she's still a clown. It's a very popular clown. Okay, but and she drives around in a clown mobile too, and eats at Big Boy. Clown. It was summer, and the clown had come to the same restaurant to which we'd come for a piece of strawberry pie. Big white smile, wig of fire. The sun had begun to set with a piece of gold in its mouth. There were devils in the dumpsters eating flies. What's that? The 3-year-old asked. I said, she is a clown. Time had begun to pass so fast I felt as if the weekly newspaper came to our house every day. Yet I had a photograph of myself in which I'd blown my bangs back, wanting to have wings like an angel or Farrah Fawcett, when what I had was hair that made me look in this photograph like a girl who'd lived for a while in another century on a distant planet. Someday my children would laugh. She's not a woman, the 3-year-old said of the clown. There were white seeds blowing around in the evening breeze without a plan, landing their fluff craft in the Big Boy parking lot onto the hoods of cars. A man puts a gun to your head and demands your child. What should you do? That's the kind of early summer night it was, the kind of night in which perhaps you have a last moment to look around and laugh at the child and the clown and the pie and the fact that if each atom could be collapsed into a sphere no bigger than its core, all of the Washington Monument could be crammed into a space no bigger than an eraser. How modest were your desires? And the order of things, it's true, a clown is last. But all of us are futile when it comes to want and stupid to look at in a restaurant. And then I thought I would read a poem for you, especially with student poets in the room, so you can learn from my example that not only could you have all of the vast experiences that you have in life to write about, and all of the ones that you will have to write about, but also you can write about things that didn't happen to you, that you never did. So this is called Bike Ride with Older Boys. Never happened. Could have happened, but it never did. And I wrote about it even though it didn't happen. Bike Ride with Older Boys. The one I didn't go on. I was 13 and they were older. I'd met them at the public pool. I must have given them my number. I'm sure I'd given them my number, knowing the girl I was. It was summer. My afternoons were made of time and vinyl. My mother worked, but I had a bike. They wanted to go for a ride, just me and them. I said, okay, fine. I'd meet them at the stop and go at 4 o'clock. And then I didn't show. I've been given a little gift, something sweet and inexpensive, something I never worked or asked or said thank you for, most days not aware of what I have been given or what I missed. Because it's that too, isn't it? I never saw those boys again. I'm not as dumb as they think I am, but neither am I wise. Perhaps it is the best afternoon of my life. 2 cute and older boys pedaling beside me, respectful, awed. When we turn down my street, the other girls see me. Everything as I imagined it would be. Or I am in a vacant field. When I stand up again, there are bits of glass and gravel ground into my knees. I will never love myself again. Who knew then that someday I would be 37, wiping crumbs off the kitchen table with a sponge, remembering them, thinking of this. Those boys still waiting outside the stop and go, smoking cigarettes, growing older. Obviously, I wrote that poem a few years ago. I'm not 37 anymore. That seemed so old at the time. Not anymore. So this is a poem that I was astonished the other day, having just picked up a book that I didn't even really know I owned, kind of skipped the introduction and found that I was in the first chapter with Donna, who I hadn't met yet, but I was going to go meet in 2 days. So I thought it was just weird, cosmic thing. So anyway, you'll have to read your poem too, but I'll read the poem that got quoted a bit in there after your poem got quoted more extensively, I would add. Not that I'm jealous. This is called View from Glassdoor, and it is based on a true story. And when they tell you not to put knives in the dishwasher with the knives pointing up, they mean it. Don't do that, because if you reach into the dishwasher, you will stab yourself with a knife. Mistake I made and will never make again. View from Glassdoor. I've stood here before. Just this morning, I reached into the dark of the dishwasher and stabbed my hand with a kitchen knife. Bright splash of blood on the kitchen floor. Astonishing red. All that brightness inside me. My son, the Boy Scout, ran to get the first aid kit. Beyond the glass door, the orchard. Beyond the orchard, the garden bed. And beyond the garden, all the simple people I remember simply standing in their lines or sitting in their chairs, waiting for the film to start, or for the plane to land, or for the physician to call them in. How easy it would have been instead to stand up shouting about cold, dumb death. But there they waited, as if the credits might begin to roll again, as if the bandages, the bolts, the scrolls, the paper towels, the toilet paper, and as the family stood around considering my hand, I could clearly hear the great silenced choirs of them singing soothing songs, who fended for and fed me, who lay beside me in the dark and stroked my head, who called me their sweetheart, their miracle child, who taught me to love by loving me, who, by dying, taught me to die. Covered in earth, on the other side of this glass door, calm, memorized faces to the sky. And here's another domestic poem that takes place in a kitchen. Sorry, I long since quit putting little sticky notes in my books because they just fall on the floor. And so I write down my page numbers. This is called Kitchen Song. The white bowls in the orderly cupboards filled with nothing. The sound of applause and running water. All those who've drowned in oceans, all who've drowned in pools, in ponds, the small family together in the car hit head on. The pantry full of lilies, the lobsters scratching to get out of the pot, and God being pulled across the heavens in a burning car. The recipes like confessions, the confessions like songs, the sun, the bomb, the white bowls in the orderly cupboards filled with blood. I wanted something simple and domestic, a kitchen song. They were just driving along. Dad turned the radio off and Mom turned it back on. So I decided to write some poems about beauty queens after I don't know why I was thinking about beauty queens, but I'd always, when I was a kid and watched, like the pageants and stuff, I always felt really sorry for the one who won Miss Congeniality. It's great, but it's not what you want. So anyway, I started thinking, well, there could be even worse things. So I did write a Miss Congeniality poem, but I'll let you imagine that one. I went on from there and I wrote, miss a post-apocalypse. That would be even worse, I guess. So the shoes in the garden seemed to know me by my name, emptied all of them, except for the whispering of the breeze as it blew over that emptiness and loosened their tongues. Girl, where are all your trashy little daydreams now? Oh, my face on the page of a magazine curled up in the fire. Me smiling on a big TV, worshiping a box of Tide. I couldn't bring myself to walk home beneath that monstrous cloud. I went back to the factory instead. I walked for miles, but the gate was locked. From somewhere inside, I could hear the last man on earth curse the last card as he drew it from the deck. That line, girl, where are all your trashy little daydreams now, comes from Joyce Carol Oates' story, Where are you going? Where have you been? Once I heard that or read that line, I could never get it out of my head again, because I'm pretty sure my mother said that to me about 1,000,000 times. And it just, it's one of those things that sticks with you. Okay, so this one is called Song of All My Suffering, or The Cause of All My Suffering. I was so happy to figure out what maybe it was. The part about the pigs is true. The cause of all my suffering. My neighbor keeps a box of baby pigs all winter in her kitchen. They are motherless, always sleeping, sleepy creatures of blood and fog. A vapor of them wraps my house in gauze, and the windows mist up with their warm breath, their moist snores. They watch her peel potatoes, boil water from the floor, wearing a steamy gown. She must be like Demeter to them, but like this weather, to me, this box of pigs is the cause of all my suffering. They smell of invalids, lotioned. Death is over there. When I look toward my neighbor's house, I see trouble looking back at me. Horrible life, horrible town. I start to dream their dreams. I dream my muzzles pressed desperately into the whiskered belly of my dead mother. No milk there. I dream I slumber in a cardboard box in a human kitchen, wishing, while a woman I don't love mushes corn for me in a dish. In every kitchen in the Midwest, there are goddesses and pigs, the sacred contagion of pity, of giving, of loss. You can't escape the soft bellies of your neighbor's calm, the fuzzy lullabies that drift in cloudy piglets across their lawns. I dream my neighbor cuts one of them open and stars fall out and roll across the floor. It frightens me. I pray to God to give me the ability to write better poems than the poems of those whom I despise. But before spring comes, my neighbor's pigs die in her kitchen, one by one, and I catch a glimpse of my own face in the empty collection plate, looking up at me hungrily one Sunday, pink and smudged, and asked it, "Isn't that enough?" So I haven't gotten a speeding ticket for a long time, but I almost got one the other day. But I'm not going to tell you much more about it. But I managed to talk my way out of it. If you need some secrets at some point, but this is one I did not manage to talk myself out of. I wasn't driving that fast. I don't drive too fast, but this is about a speeding ticket. It's called, you won't believe this, speeding ticket. The officer asks if I know why it is I've been pulled over. Oh no, I say, not that armed robbery back in '88. It is a joke only a woman with 2 children in the car, a woman of a certain age, would make. There's a small, pleasant birthmark shaped like an island I've been to on his face. I show him the proper papers. Yes, I've been to that place, and I know about narrow escapes. So many sputtering coals tossed into the mossy shadows among the forget-me-nots, the violets, the wild oregano. In a hurry, ma'am, today? Hell no. We could have been early or late. Who cared? They never unlock that gate. What difference would it make? What I was after was just a graceful passage to another place, And now I know there's no such thing. A flock of swans risen from the lake. No swans, no way. The self, contrary to popular opinion, is not the thing that remains. We are infinite, and it isn't a question, is it, of whether or not we could be replaced? Who among the millions of us would be worth the trouble it would take? Truly, I wanted only to appear to obtain such grace. And then through the years, somehow I became a high brick wall, fully expecting the little blue flowers to thrive in my shade. Once I let a crescent wrench rust for years in snow and rain. I knew exactly where I dropped it, could have taken you to the high grass into which I'd let it slip, but there it stayed until I saw the paper boy pick it up and put it in his pocket one day. Strange, only the other morning my son said he wanted to be a policeman or a demon when he grew up, to get bad people, he said. And I said yes, and I poured more coffee into my cup. And I remembered the signs were posted all over that place. Thin ice, no skating. We skated anyway. The yellow tape, the psychology majors, the structuralists, the policymakers, and how when the time finally came to stand before them and try to explain, I had nothing at all to say. Only to find myself suddenly unable any longer not to say it, finally having you here like this, all ears and leaning into my window with an island on your face. True enough, I was not yet naked. Comprehensive collision. The neighborhood was safe. I had an address in it and a name, only to find you, this patient beside me, beside my motor vehicle in your final disguise, all merciless kindness, laughing a little with a boy's turquoise eyes. A voice says, hurry, I'm burning. A voice says, where are you hurt? All those years I thought, if only there were a fine, I could pay it wholly, and this slow torture would be over. A voice said, this isn't the end, you know. No monologue can save you. A voice says, yes, officer, I know why it is I've been pulled over. While you write it down, as I always knew you would, this gentle reckoning all my life, I was driving toward it as fast as I could. This is called The Second Week of May. And then after that, I'm going to read a happy poem, maybe if I can find one. The Second Week of May. What will we buy with Judas's money? Who will live in Hitler's house? What shall we do with this veil stolen from the murdered bride, this blanket lifted from the sleeping child? I will buy candy, says the sweetheart. I will grow here, the primrose sings. The lightness of silk in a perfumed breeze, softest cashmere, pale pink. Where can we build the house of spring, the one built on a clear conscience, the one in which no innocent civilian has ever been killed? Yes, imagine every day a clean kitchen, every night a Puritan's pillow. But it's May, and the lilac whispers to the wisteria, whose shadow shall I wear this year to the prom? Whose white scarf sewn from a virgin's last breath is this? Okay, well, I'm gonna find the funny one here. It's not like hilarious, but it's so I talked about this in one of the classes today. And it's a poem I wrote long ago when I first had my son and started buying baby products and noticed that all of them had on them, and still do, the disclaimer, do not leave baby unattended. And some of them go so far as to say underneath that, no product can take the place of parental supervision, which does make you think that there must be a lot of people who think they can buy a high chair and go away for the weekend. But you can't, and you know it. Once you have the baby, you can't leave it unattended. So that I wrote this poem, Do Not Leave Baby Unattended, Manufacturer's Warning. There is a maker who refuses to be sued, a presence among us which does not wish to be believed in or leaned on or seen. He drops a small seed in the earth, fruitful, dutiful, blind, and it is me. But the earth around it is also me. He names me this one's mother, and there will never be any other who could share a liability, if anything, if something. The unspeakable lodges itself like a boiling coin of blood on the tongue. Even if I die, this one is mine. My faith is a dove asleep in the slaughterhouse eaves. My attention is a net sown of smoke and weight. Even if I died, my eyes would have to be always open underground or blinking in the sky. Whoever you are, up all night, embroidering warnings and disclaimers on our things, sleep easy, please. I cannot sue you. I cannot even die. Some nights are darker than trees. The sky in their hair breathes. There is no one in this house when the lights are out, but the great blameless maker and the child and the mother attending these. And I'm going to end with this poem because Donna pulled a particular tarot card out of the pack. So I thought maybe it's good luck or bad luck. I don't really know anymore. But this was based on a true story. My husband, his girlfriend before me made him a salad once, and lo and behold, he sat down to eat the salad and there was a praying mantis in it. And he thinks it was a mistake. I kind of wonder, but he's like, how hard is it to get a praying mantis and put it in the salad? But anyway, he's always kind of been off salads since then, but I wrote this poem for him anyway, and I will end with this poem. Praying mantis in my husband's salad. Once he found one among the lettuce leaves and cabbage shreds a former girlfriend had arranged on a plate for him. If it was still alive, I can't remember what my husband said that he and the girlfriend did with it. But so it is, this remembrance of the stories of the days of love with another love of the one you love. She had blue eyes, he told me that, and long black hair. She may or may not have worn glasses. If she did, she would have looked like a scholar in them. And then the whole sexy scholar thing when she took them off to lie down beside him on the bed. This was long before I met him, so why should I be jealous or even sad? Even stranger is, how can I remember it and remember it so well? But I can, having seen some praying mantises myself. Their switchblade limbs, the precision of their folding insectness, and their Martian faces, of course, with such innocent expressions, but all knowing and all business, and the lettuce green of them. This bitch, I looked her up on the internet. She's still alive in California, where she teaches something pointless like linguistics. But here's the thing. He's never, my husband, been a salad eater. Was he then? Was the praying mantis he found once in his lettuce the reason he has eaten no salad since I met him? Or was he just in love? Was he trying to please this salad-tossing girlfriend from the past who offered up to him the last pale green thing he'd ever eat again? Maybe they were brown, her eyes. Now I can't remember that, but I'd bet you any amount of money that her legs were long and that she shaved them in his bathtub with his razor. Her neck, elegant as a swan's, blah, blah. But then imagine it, their surprise, and just try not to laugh out loud. My tiny triangular head swiveling from side to side. My dead expression, while my arms, sharpened swords, in fact, for I've been seen to slice and eat a hummingbird on National Geographic, seemed folded up in supplication or in praise or in solemn meditation, just as they were spreading out their napkins on their laps and raising perhaps their glasses in a toast to the meal she'd made for him and which they were about to share, beginning with that salad and also ending there. Thank you very much for listening to my reading. Thank you. So is it my understanding there's do I go?
Short Q&A, Mike will kind of walk around and.
Yes, where are we going? Let's see lots of hands. Where are the hands? Or do I have to start? Okay, maybe I'll kick. Oh, yeah? Okay, great. Oh, I thought you were.
You got it, you got it. You got it.
All right, you can think for a second. So I was talking to some of the MFAs earlier about last lines, and I noticed when I was reading Space and Chains, so many of your last lines are really just pack so much energy and just really launch us forward a lot. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how you think about last lines.
Well, it's so hard to talk about what you think about, I guess. For me, it is anyway. There's a lot of weight on last lines, for better or worse. A lot of times in my revision, a big part of my revision process is paring down because I tend to go on and on and on with the last lines. And I find that, well, and also with the beginnings. I mean, a lot of times the beginnings of my poems are kind of start slowly, like I'm getting into a pool of very cold water before I start the actual poem. I lop that off and it starts with more energy. And if I find a place where I can lop off and end with more energy, I try to. I also think maybe when I'm in the process of writing poems, I don't like if I don't have last lines that I can come up with that feel like somebody asked today, when do you know a poem's over? And I guess as Auden famously said, you never know. Something like that. Don't quote me on that, but you don't. I think it's not a poem I would read to you or publish or show anybody if I didn't feel like I could get the end seems real important to me to trying to get that right. But so this is just to say I have a lot of poems with very bad endings, but I appreciate you. I tried not to read those ones. So.
Find a question over here. I can sense one. Here we go.
Hi,
Hi.
it's me again. I was wondering how you come up with your titles, if some of them generate like a lot of thought or you just kind of stumble upon something, you're like, that's going to be a title.
Well, usually I don't, very rarely I have a title in mind, at the beginning of a poem, very, very rarely. But that's usually just because, it's a subject matter I already had in mind. So maybe Praying Mantis in My Husband's Salad, maybe that title came before the poem did. But a lot of times I find my title somewhere in the poem, a line or a few words or a word in there. I try to avoid titles that might seem explanatory because I feel like you don't know the poems about the 4th of July, then it doesn't. Like kind of cheating to have the title tell you about that. Usually I always advise my students to do this too, because titles are hard. They're embarrassing, really. It's embarrassing sometimes to tell people, especially a book. So what's the title of your book? Never mind. But then you're like, it's really bad. I'm publishing a book I'm too embarrassed to say the title of, but there's just, a lot of weight on that as well. So I would say once in a while, I know the title came before the poem because I knew what the poem's going to be about. But a lot of times when I don't have a title, I kind of delve into the poem and find something that it seems like it's not necessarily crystallizes, but has some suggestion that it can offer the rest of the poem.
Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. So good to hear you. So good to see you. Laura, who are some poets, maybe long dead poets, who have inspired you? I mean, most poets read. So who are some of the poets who have moved you? Maybe you don't write like them, of course, but who opened worlds to you that you hadn't discovered yet on your own?
Well, I somehow miraculously ended up studying with the only poet I was familiar with teaching at that time, who was deeply into the St. Mark's Poetry Project and was involved with it, and also the Black Mountain Poets. So Alice Notley, Robert Duncan, Ed Dorn, Denise Levertov, Creeley. I loved Creeley. I saw him read here in New York City. He took out his eye and glared at all of us, and was wonderful. So I mean, those were my influences. And now and then I was saying earlier, I was like lately I've been really interested in reading a lot of poetry and translation. I mean, I have no idea what the poetry is like in other languages because I only speak English, but the French symbolists and Transtromer and Trockle and lately I've really been reading a lot of Larry Levis and James Tate. I'm really enjoying James Tate a lot. So I don't think I appreciated him enough previously. It's weird because there's poets who I could say were, like gods to me for a while. And I mean, it's not like I'm like meh now, but they're not that anymore. And poets, I just don't think I was smart enough to get them for a little while. It took me a while to understand what was so brilliant about them. It was always there. I just couldn't see it yet.
Do you do your own editing or do you use other people to help you edit?
Well, I have an editor for, when things get to the book stage. But, I pretty much edit my own stuff. I mean, I used to have friends look at things, but then I don't know. I'm like, I feel now I'm just at a point where if the poem's not very good, nothing you can do to help me with it. And if I like it, I don't want to hear what you have to think about it. It's hard to keep friends that way. You're asking them to edit your poetry.
How long does it take to normally write a poem?
Oh, well, I mean, my process is, I just write and write and write longhand and on pages and in a crappy, cheap notebook. And a lot of times it goes nowhere. And so, I mean, in some ways that might count as the next thing because, writing, I mean, no matter how bad it is, you're never wasting writing. It's practice. You're gearing up for the next thing you're going to write. So that kind of should count in a little bit to the writing process. But, if I write, like if I really feel like I get off to the good start with something and it's worth working on, I mean, usually I keep it as a rough draft, just a written, scrawled rough draft in my notebook for a while. And then I revise it, maybe longhand again. And then I start to type it up and then I leave it alone. I try to leave it alone for, as long as I can, a month or 2 months or however long, so that when I come back to it, I can hear if it doesn't sound right or I can see what's wrong with it. Because otherwise I feel like when I've just written something, I think, ooh, this is pretty good. It's impossible for me to see what's wrong with it until I have that kind of distance. So it's sort of hard to say. I don't like, I've never really whipped off a poem in an hour or so. So I've written drafts of them, but I go back to them pretty obsessively for longer than I can really, I don't know how long, long time.
Can you tell us something that you've learned from your students or from being in the classroom?
Well, it's a lot. I've learned a lot of things from students and being in the classroom. I think, the best and most inspiring thing that I've learned, from my students is that when they stick with it and when they want to do it, even when they think that they can't, once they figure out subject matter that they're interested in and a process that works for them, and like their subject matter could be subject matter none of the rest of us would ever want to write about, and their process could be, I mean, I got a lot of iPhone poets going on, texting poets going on. I don't think I could write poems that way, but once they get those two things down, they start to love poetry. And once they start to love poetry, they start to read a lot of poetry. And once they do that, they turn out to be really good poets. And it just sort of reminds me, oh, that's how you do it, right? Just like you figure out what it is you will want to write about it. I mean, not that that won't change in the process, not that that won't change. And then you do it, and then it makes you want to keep doing it. So that, and I've got like a whole bunch of Spotify playlists I would never have had before. Yes.
I often hear people telling me you should read contemporary poets. So look at who is writing now and what their voice is, I guess. But I always get this feeling I just want to read, the greats. Like, what if I just want to read Baudelaire and Rilke and Blake? I mean, is that enough?
I think there are more greats that you could, but if you want to read those, you should read those. And then eventually you might find poets, contemporary poets who have been influenced by those poets who will be of interest to you. But I have to say, I don't really agree, like just reading contemporary poets. I mean, like, how are you to do that? There's a billion out there. I mean, so just because they're contemporary doesn't mean they're any good. So I think you just named the three poets that I think anybody would be proud to know you for reading them. So, and you will, you'll find poets who, I mean, like, who would we say, like if you like, Rimbaud, you're probably going to like Russell Edson, maybe. I mean, you're going to like surrealists. Then you'll want to read Apollinaire, and from there you'll understand, James Tate, Larry Levis, but you can't. That advice kind of worries me because it makes me think it's a way of trying to teach you how to publish poems, which I am like, because I did that for a while. I just like, oh, well, all I get is rejections. I'm going to start reading these poets who aren't getting rejections and maybe try to write like them. It was disastrous. You got to figure out your own voice. And if you're going to be influenced by those poets, you're going to be a good poet. Go for it.
So my question was, your book captures many moments of your life. So I was wondering, what makes you choose a particular moment in your life that you choose to write about?
It's not all, I mean, obviously, like cut my hand with on a knife in the dishwasher was not a turning point for me or anything. I think it's just my process. I start writing. That happened to me that day and kind of led me to thinking about mortality somehow. I mean, sometimes, interesting or quirky or like poetry, anecdote material type things happen to me. But a lot of times it's just like what's on my mind at the moment. And a lot of times it doesn't turn into a poem and nobody ever has to hear about it again. And then sometimes, just something maybe about the language or what it suggests beyond just the anecdote comes to me. So. Yep.
Hi. I know you wrote a lot of poems, but what are the few themes that circle around majority of the pieces you wrote?
My poems.
Yeah.
Death. Mostly.
Yeah, that's fine.
Loss and love.
Yeah, I see
family
happy
life.
moments in your
Yeah.
books.
Uh-huh.
And this is just one last one. Is there a poet whose poems that may relate or sound very similar to your poems? that you
Oh,
read?
I'm sure there are. I hate to think of how many of them there are that there's a whole world of poetry out there just waiting to funnel, and it's funneling through us. I'd have to let other people speak to that.
All right, I think we have time for one more.
Dante, man. Just kidding. In translation.
Why did you choose poetry for your memoir?
Pardon?
Why did you choose poetry for your memoir?
For my genre, really, I just liked poetry from when I was a little kid. I don't know why. I remember in 5th grade, Mrs. Bird had us write our own little books of poems, and I loved doing that. And that was the first time when I was working on that little book of poems, I got up in the middle of the night because I had an idea for a poem. And after that, I was just hooked. But I would say that, I also liked tap dancing, but I don't do that anymore because I was not any good at that. And, but I was an only child and I got a lot of positive reinforcement for doing things alone quietly in my room. So poetry writing went well with that. Thank you very much. Thank you so much.